All right, all right, all right, all right. How are we feeling? Temperature check. All right, we're good? Good. That was a really engaging conversation. You know, it's good to hear people talk candidly about these things that make big headlines. I know I remember reporting on the fact that NASCAR decided to ban the Confederate flag and just hearing people's reactions to that, but it was so interesting to get to hear some of the thought process behind that decision. You know, it's really cool that we get the opportunity to hear from people who are so powerful, who make these big decisions and understand what goes into that. Sometimes you don't envy being in that position, right? Am I right? I mean, that's kind of a tough decision to make, but really, really cool to hear that awesome conversation. We have one of the best people in this room right now to talk about social justice, civil rights. This person is an icon, actually more than one icon that I'm about to introduce. But before I tell you who it is, leave you in suspense a little bit, I'll tell you what we're going to talk about. Civil rights, and we're going to also have one of the most influential CEOs and an internationally recognized leader for financial inclusion. So the conversation is about civil rights. So I want you to help me to introduce to the stage the CEO of Delta Airlines, Ed Bastian, Operation Hope CEO, John Hope Bryant, CNBC correspondent Frank Holland, living legend, Dr. Benjamin Chavis, and last but not least, civil rights icon and former Atlanta Mayor, Ambassador Andrew Young. Give it up.
The honorary doctorate degrees, people.
Where do I sit? This good?
Whatever you want. 130 honorary doctorate degrees. First congressman since Reconstruction in the South. The only mayor mentored by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Presidential Medal of Freedom awardee. French Fortune Legion awardee. The guy who brought the Olympics to Atlanta. The guy who made Atlanta the only natural city in the South. The lieutenant to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Basically the North American Nelson Mandela, Andrew Young. Woo!
All right. Yes, sir.
I always like to say that in fact, almost none of those honorary degree schools would let me in when I was a freshman.
So, and Dr. King got a C- in public speaking from Crozier Seminary. If you didn't know that, it's true, actually.
It is.
Said if he didn't stop speaking like that, he'd never amount to anything. Are you guys enjoying this so far? Now, I'm gonna have to do something really difficult. I gotta shut up, because Frank's the moderator of this session.
Well, we definitely don't want you to shut up. Number one, good morning, everybody. I'm Frank Holland from CNBC, and I'm anchor and correspondent with the world's biggest business network. It is such a pleasure to be here at this event. First, before we even get started, I know everybody's been clapping for a bit, but I want to give one more round of applause for this esteemed panel right here. We have four of the leading business, political, social leaders. These people aren't just people that talk the talk, they walk the walk. We also want to give an applause for all the people that they are empowering to go forward, to carry on their legacies. So everybody knows we're here to talk about the intersection of civil rights and civil rights. Show of hands. Everybody knows what civil rights are? All right, you bought a ticket, so I'm hoping so, right? It's really just making that transition. I mean, I think most of us have learned, or we're starting to learn, that there's an intersection between social justice and economic justice. I want to start off with you, Ambassador Young. Let's just talk about it. Where do you think we are right now when it comes to traversing that canyon between civil rights and economic rights?
Well, you know, it's always been not an either or, it's been a both and. You're sitting next to the president of Delta, and Delta moved here, I think, in the 40s, 1946 or something like that. Yep. And their move from Monroe, Louisiana to Atlanta changed the city. Delta's decision, and Coca-Cola, I think, started down in South Georgia and moved to Atlanta. The coming together of those two really that's sort of the foundation of Atlanta, because already here you had 5 black colleges, and you had more black PhDs in Georgia in the 40s than you did anywhere else in the world. And that coalition made Atlanta look out to the world. And though I agree with John's movement of the movement from civil rights to civil rights, in the beginning, this was a civil rights movement. I mean, in the beginning, people moved here for education and money.
Yeah, okay.
And but the movement started out protesting politics because, but it was successful because it got the support of business. When I went to Birmingham with Martin Luther King, we went in January, but we didn't demonstrate a thing until March. And Martin, Dr. King said to me, Andy, you got to get to know some white folks. You need to find a way to get to the business community because we want to meet with them and tell them what we're doing and work with them for social change. And so it happened to me very easily because I'm a preacher too, and I went through the Episcopal Church. And the Episcopal Church bishop is very well respected in the South, and usually you got to go through seminary to be an Episcopalian, and so they were amongst the more educated Southern whites. So when he pulled together the white business community and met with Martin Luther King and Fred Shuttlesworth, Ralph Abernathy, and others, that was in February. We didn't make a march until March. And so there was a whole month of preparation between the business community and the black community before the conflict started. That's what we didn't have with Black Lives Matter. And it's not anybody's fault. We all learned at the same time of the death. In fact, we watched it that 9 minutes and 41 seconds. Everybody in the world saw there was no time to do the preparation, and that's the reason why things didn't come out directly, but the business community there was the responsive community. And John, you know more about that, so I'll shut up.
No, you're correct. And by the way, these two icons here, Ben Chavis was a youth coordinator on the March on Washington and has had, if you don't know his complete history, please look it up. It's amazing. He's still creating change, and they're still creating change to this day. But business has always been there. And to your point, Ambassador Young, recently business committed $62 billion for social justice since George Floyd. But somebody who was doing this before George Floyd is Ed Bastian. And before the George Floyd happened, he had committed that he was going to compensate his employees and profit share with them. So basically, he told the board, told Wall Street what they were going to, the mark they're going to hit. Anything above that, he was going to share with his employees. So one day I asked him what the number was. It was $1 billion. This was 2019?
2017.
2017.
It's $1.6 billion in 2019.
That's what I'm talking about. That's social justice through an economic lens, where you believe that all boats can rise at the same time. You can do well and do good together. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we have the luxury of going from one civil rights icon to the next, Dr. Chavis right here. We were talking actually before the panel, hope you don't mind me sharing, just about how some people, maybe even some people in this room, see that there's a silo between civil rights and economic rights and the people that work on civil rights and also the push for economic rights. Can you explain why that just doesn't make sense, how the two are definitely intertwined?
Absolutely, and I just want to, I think Ambassador Young has been too modest here.
Yeah.
We all in this room have benefited and will continue to benefit from the sacrifice, from the genius, from the commitment of people like Ambassador Andrew Young. So, with that said, I'm a little younger, not too much younger, I was a young teenager in 1963. I was a youth coordinator with Golden Frinks, who was the state field secretary of SCLC in North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. But I just want to say what you asked. To me, civil rights is civil rights, and civil rights are civil rights. This distinction that you fight for social justice over here, and there's another group of people fighting for economic justice over here, to me, that's not the reality. Being a fighter for freedom, justice, and equality does not remove one from also understanding the importance of economic justice, economic social justice. And I just, in my own life, as I got married very early, had a family, John, and so how was I going to raise money to participate in the civil rights movement? And one of the things that people don't talk about, Andy knows, black-owned businesses supported the civil rights movement. The barbershops, the beauty parlors. Where I'm from, North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, A.C. Spalding and them, started the Black Bank, Mechanics and Farmers Bank. And they contributed to the civil rights movement. And
Russell and Company.
yes, and we understood that it was important, but a little short story, my parents owned a grocery store called the Ridley Drive-In. So in 1968, 1969, I changed the grocery store into a disco called the Soul Kitchen. So out of the Soul Kitchen, and the reason why I named it Soul Kitchen, because Floyd McKissick was trying to build Soul City in Warren County, North Carolina. Out of the Soul Kitchen, I took care of my family and financed the whole Eastern North Carolina civil rights movement out of that one business. So growing up, I've learned the importance between economic justice and social justice. In fact, the two are co-joined. And that's why I'm pleased to be on a panel with somebody like Ed, who heads up Delta, because we need all the CEOs to be like this guy.
That's right.
To make not just a verbal commitment, but a tangible financial commitment to support social change, to support racial justice, to support economic justice. And I think too often today, if I could say in 2022, as we prepare to go in 2023, we try to separate these movements. We separate economic justice from environmental justice, or from climate justice, or from civil rights. I think we have to see that if we change the world, we got to do it for all of God's people, not just some of God's people.
That's right.
It's the oneness of humanity.
So speaking of that, expanding the civil rights movement beyond just looking at marches and things like that, bringing it to the business world. We do have one of the leading business leaders in the United States right here, Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta Airlines. You've been growing your partnership with Hope, especially in supporting your workforce, the ways to improve their financial well-being, their well-being. Can you share why this is important to you personally and, of course, to your company?
Well, thank you, Frank, and it's a real honor for me to be with these esteemed leaders of our, not just the society, but in our world today.
And by the way, Ed, we all had a little committee vote. We made you an honorary black man.
I'm honorary black man? Okay, good. I think you did that 5 years ago. I'm good. It's good by me. I'm honored. But when you, particularly looking back over the last handful of years, what we've been through with the pandemic has exposed the vulnerabilities far beyond just a health crisis. It's exposed, with the murder of George Floyd, a societal crisis that started to, the world was quieted so people could watch and see what was happening. I don't think if there wasn't a pandemic going on, you would have had the outrage and you would have had the visibility. We should have had it, but I think it would have just been another thing. You think about the emotional, mental well-being of so many people that were altered during this time. I think everyone in this room was impacted emotionally, mentally, not just physically by what we went through, and financially as well. Because what we saw during the pandemic were the people that had to go out and work. Many of your clients, John, didn't have the luxury to sit home and call in on Zoom.
That's right.
Or have someone bring them. It was your clientele, your customer base, your demographic that you spend time servicing. that had to go out in the line of fire in a dangerous time. And we also have a lot of that within Delta, because we kept flying throughout the entire pandemic. And so one of the things that coming through the pandemic, I spoke to John a lot about, is getting his coaches on our properties so that our people can be helped, whether it's improving their credit scores, learning how to put together a financial budget for the first time, understanding what home ownership means and how you get there. We've had thousands of people sign up, inside the workplace through Operation Hope to get that support. And that well-being, that financial well-being is foundational to many of these other crises that I was speaking to. It's also led us to create a financial safety net. And we are struck by the fact that in this country today, John, you know the numbers better than I, but I think it's around 40% of the people in this country could not put their hands on $400.
It's like 64%.
64%,
Yeah.
I understand it. 64% could not put their hands on $400 in the event of a crisis, and I'm sure some of the people in this room today fit in that category as well. I know some of our employees, even though we pay well, people go paycheck to paycheck. It's a thing, right? And we've set up a program where we're putting aside for our employees $1,000 as a safety net, and we're holding it for them so they'll never fall
Whoa,
in.
back up. You just walked right past it. Hold on. No, I'm sorry. My apologies. I'm sorry. All of your employers give you $1,000 for an unplanned event or an emergency, plus free financial coaching and free financial counseling at no cost to you. All of your employees do that. This is normal, right? Then give the man some love.
Thank you.
By the way, somebody stand up over here. That's a Delta employee. I didn't know he was going to say this. I've been keeping my lips zipped. I know this was coming for January. I didn't know you were going to say it today. This is extraordinary. He's done financial coaching nationwide in his offices, free financial coaching. We've created homeowners, and we've gotten people out of financial straits and stress. Walking to the plane, whatever, people are telling me their story about how they were all stressed out and how they're living lives where they feel a sense of justice and fairness and fair play. Well, what they don't know now is if you go through financial coaching for free, that will gateway you to get a $1,000 account that you can use to dignify your life in case you miss rent, or you miss a car note, or Johnny gets sick, or you have life happens to you. That's extraordinary.
Thank you, John.
Ed Bastian, you're a great man.
Well, thank you, John. It's great. And one other thing I want to add, the financial safety net does come with responsibility. We don't just give $1,000 away. We ask people to take courses, which John provides, around financial literacy, so that once they've taken the courses, the $1,000 is waiting for them. People need a hand up, not a handout, right?
Amen. And how many employees do you have, Ed?
90,000.
90,000. It's a big deal.
Do the math, John. Go ahead and do the math.
Oh, I'm doing the math. I did the math.
So obviously Operation Hope's very fortunate and grateful to have a business champion like Ed Bastian. But I want to ask you, gentlemen, about just the need for us as consumers to really ask the companies that we support and the business that we support to take steps like Mr. Bastian's taking. Here in Atlanta, there's actually a history of this. Back in the 1960s when Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize, it was the former chairman of Coca-Cola that rallied the entire city to make sure that the city honored Dr. King. So again, back to you, Ambassador Young. As consumers, we're very lucky to have Mr. Bastian. We're very lucky to have that former chairman of Coca-Cola that were champions of the civil rights and civil rights movement. But as consumers, what can we do to really push the companies that we support to take similar actions?
I don't hear very good up here, but so I'm not sure what you said. Forgive me.
Oh, of course. As consumers, what should we do to push the companies that we give our money to, the companies that we support, to support civil rights?
Well, I tell you what, you can push companies, but I have always found that it's better, and I think John is very good at this. John calls Ed probably twice a month.
Absolutely.
More than that.
Yeah. And
I wish it was only once or twice a month sometimes. I love you, John.
Love
but
you back.
I think the CEOs that I've been friendly with see them when you don't want anything. You know, maintain a relationship that is real.
That's important. Really important.
Atlanta's method was
That's everything.
I forget what they called it, the Action Forum, when 10 CEOs who were black with smaller businesses met with the 10 largest CEOs in the city. And they did that once a month on Saturday morning. And they were in their gym clothes, casual. Pretty soon they started going out playing golf together on Saturday afternoon. And it became organic, so that it wasn't a rare occasion when you saw one of the CEOs. It was a community. And from civil rights to civil rights, I think requires it becoming a part of the community ethic.
Yes.
That we don't need to think of business as the enemy. After all, the way we eat is because of efficient business. And you can't get anywhere in the world without flying Delta. But also, and I'm pushing, you know, I'm in Atlanta, so I say with Coca-Cola, I call it a sacrament of civility, because people don't fight when they're drinking Coke. You don't have an argument over a Coca-Cola. You might have an argument over, you know, Scotch, bourbon.
Definitely over Scotch.
Bourbon is probably a fighting drink. You drink till you get frustrated and then you have a fight. I mean, that's the way moonshine was. That was in the old days when it was inexpensive. Now you have reached a certain level of civility to be able to afford a fifth of bourbon. So it's cool. And but developing ongoing sustainable friendships, and that's part of the staff at Delta. There are people that call me from Delta just when somebody's passing through town and they ask about me, they can get me on the phone and I can say hello. In fact, the last time I saw Muhammad Ali, he was passing through Atlanta and I was in the airport and he was there, and somebody took me over to the waiting room where he was, and there he was holding court. Keeping that community feeling. And because you can't do business with people you don't like.
Right.
I mean, you do business with people that you respect and honor and even learn to love, because you're interdependent. And when you realize that, everything works better.
So obviously I used the wrong word, not push, but collaborate with business and build relationships with business leaders. So we're almost out of time. Dr. Chavis, John, I'm coming to you last because you're hard to shut up. Dr. Chavis.
I'm going to be very, very short. Dr. King's last book was Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And he just talked about the community. I want to just expand Dr. King's concept of the beloved community. And I'm going to use this opportunity because, John, I know this is about civil rights, but I got to break the silence. Those of us who are against racism, we also must be against anti-Semitism. There's too much silence. There's too much silence.
Amen.
There's too much silence. And the concept of the beloved community is that, as Andy said, we not only build relationships, but relationships that are mutually respectful. And then when one of our constituents is attacked, all of us are attacked. The unity that we had in the civil rights movement, we need in the civil rights movement. Yeah. That unity, that love and mutual respect of one another. See, to me, I don't think a company like Delta making huge profits, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It's how you use the profits. You and I were just whispering to one another the difference between charity and economic empowerment.
Yeah.
The movement, we're not asking for a charitable economy. I'm not against charities, but I would much rather be empowered to make some money myself.
Amen. Amen.
Mr.
Amen.
Bastian, one more quick word before we go. I'm going to let John wrap it up then. But what can we all do as a community to let you know, as a business leader, our priorities and the things that we're expecting and hoping from you?
Well, certainly at Delta, we have an enormous community. And being here as the largest employer in Georgia, the largest employer in the city of Atlanta, we need everyone to join us on this mission. One of the things that we're doing that I think would be very interesting for everyone to hear, but also for other businesses to start to follow us, is that we're trying to, we all know during the pandemic we lost a lot of people, employees, and we've been hiring and bringing people in. One of the things we've been working on some time, and we used the pandemic to launch it, is skills-based hiring rather than people that have had an advantaged opportunity to get a head start when others haven't. And so we've gone through just about every job in our company, including our pilots, and we now hire on skills, not on degree. Not from what you were given, but what you've shown the aptitude for. And we are hiring thousands of people across so many different lines. We're also bringing people through academies. We've launched an analytics academy. I was just at the graduation of it last week. Frontline employees, whether you're in the ramp or you're working in the airport or up on the tower, and teaching them the analytics skills to help them advance their own development degree. They don't have a 4-year degree, but they have the mind and the desire to get better. We're doing that in technology. We're doing that in so many different parts of the company. That's how you build community. And by doing that, you build family, and you build a brand that people love, and it's your way of investing back into your future.
Wonderful.
There's one thing I'd like to remind you to think about, that change is constant. I became mayor of this city in 1981, and we were just reaching 1 million people. We're beyond 7 million now. There are all kinds of things. Our airport is 50 times larger than it was, maybe 100 times larger than it was then. I think 110 million people
That's right.
went through that airport last year.
Busiest in the world.
Busiest in the world. And so things are going to be complicated. Now, why do we have crime? Because we've moved on too fast and we've left some people behind. So that you have to take care of those who are, and make sure you don't leave too many people behind. And that's what corporations do, but that's what communities have to find a way to do.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is by concentrating on elementary and secondary education. Now, we've probably got 1 million college students around Georgia now. That makes a difference. Why we're moving from civil rights to civil rights? Because of the Hope Scholarship. And we got many, many more kids. We probably have 1 million college students in Georgia very easily. And that's why we're turning one to the other. Political changes. You talk about student loan forgiveness. I remind people that my wife got her master's, first wife, got her master's degree in New York, and it didn't cost but $16 a semester.
Wow.
And that was the same kind of master's degree that you got anywhere else. In fact, that was the thing that pushed New York forward. New York, Colin Powell went to college free at City College.
Wow.
So that good education, and not just high-priced education, is, in fact, I shouldn't say his name, but there was a certain governor that decided in California that too many people were getting college degrees.
That's right.
And we needed to push more people into the trades. And he deliberately got the California colleges to raise tuition to be equal to the Ivy League tuitions. Why, I don't know. But it was a means of discrimination. So the economy becomes a civil right, and a civil rights are not too different. If they can't keep you down one way, they'll keep you down another. So we're not really making progress when we go from discrimination on the basis of color to discrimination on the basis of education. And a society like ours needs as many well-educated people as possible at every level, and take people seriously. It's hard, but get to know the man that picks up the garbage. Because if you ever run a city, you can't run it if somebody doesn't pick up the garbage.
Yeah. Amen.
And so they're just as important as the people who are sitting in the suites.
Frank, I don't know where you got your tennis shoe game from, but I got my sneaker game from Ed Bastian. When Ed started wearing sneakers as CEO with the suits, I said, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. But I picked up a number of good habits from Ed Bastian. Ed is a special human being. He not only runs a company well, he treats his friends well. He is constantly inviting Shatra and I to come with him and his family to his house, to his events. We have a relationship, is what Dr. Chaves and I were just talking about, what really Ambassador Young was saying. Civil rights leaders created a relationship amongst themselves with the community, but they really thought the business community was almost their enemy. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, we had a chasm between those two. And you don't want to have a chasm between capital and capital, human capital and financial capital. That's right. Now we have an opportunity to create relationships between human capital and financial capital. It's a natural relationship. It's not a user relationship. It's, I'm asking him, what can I do from him? He's asking me, what can I do for me? And we're busy patting each other on the back. We love each other and we like each other. And sometimes we tolerate each other. And sometimes we disagree. I'm not sure when that was. Because the problem is I keep agreeing with him. He called me when this voting thing was going down here in the city, in Georgia. It was 9 o'clock at night. And he was really struggling. And I don't want to say too much that was private, but I think the part that you don't mind me saying is he thought that by making a bad law less bad was what he should be doing by helping legislators not shoot themselves in the foot. But once he talked to his black employees and his brown employees and his female employees and people who were struggling with not being seen, he realized it wasn't good enough not to let a bad thing be less bad. He had to actually try to make a good thing good, or a bad thing good. He had to make it good. And basically he came out the next day after we talked. And he talked to me, he talked to several others, talked to Ambassador Young. And he said, voting is a human right. Period. And as easy as that may sound for you and me, he got pushback from other people who thought that he had gone too far. And for a day or so, it was uncomfortable. But within a week, 100 CEOs came out and followed Ed Bastian and did the same thing. He's done it on this issue. He did it on the NRA issue. He's done it on sharing profits with employees. He's been a leader in every, and I think to bring this home, Ambassador Young, you told me the story of Robert Woodruff, of Coca-Cola, where when Dr. King was going to win the Nobel Peace Prize, no one wanted to honor him here. The business community didn't want to honor Dr. King in Atlanta. So the chairman of Coca-Cola got the business leaders together and said, now look, y'all don't want to honor this man. He's won the most important award in the world. We're a global supply chain company. Y'all don't want to honor him? That's fine. Atlanta needs Coke. Coke don't need Atlanta. We'll move out of this little backwards town and go someplace where we got some sense. He told the business community, you got a week to sell out that ballroom. And by the way, you're all my vendors. So think about it. Go look at history books. Go look at photos. The ballroom is packed. But it just wasn't because it was the right thing to do. It's because a leader stood up and said we need to do the right thing. Join me in acknowledging Ed Bastian with the 30th anniversary, 30 Years of Hope Leadership Legacy Award for all you do to stand up for the principles of Robert Woodruff and leaders who care.
Appreciate you.
Love you, man.
Love you too. I love that. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Can we stand with Ed Bastian? We can get a photo together. And I know that somewhere in the audience also is Ambassador Young's grandson who's taking photos. We got a family affair here. God bless you all. It's a great day in Atlanta.
Awesome. Thank you, John.